Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Streamed and Screened, an entertainment podcast about movies and TV from Lee Enterprises. I'm Terry Lipschutz, a senior producer at Lee and co-host of the program with Bruce Miller, editor of the Sioux City Journal and a longtime entertainment reporter.
I'm a holdover.
You're a holdover. You've been here forever. You are a holdover.
I am. I remember when Alexander Payne wasn't making movies. Now, how's that for a connection? But yeah, we are getting into Thanksgiving season. So this means that you're going to get films that maybe the whole family would go to because, come on, what else is there to do over Thanksgiving holiday? Eat and go to the movies, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so you're going to start seeing some of those ones that are a little more like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles back in the day. That was a big kind of holiday. Let's go see it because it's entertaining. And that's what we'll be getting now. I think you'll be seeing some of those before the Christmas rush and then the Oscar run. So look for the fun ones. And one that I really, really loved was The Holdovers. That's the newest Alexander Payne film. It's set in 1970, and it's set at a private boys' school in the East Coast. And apparently all kids didn't go home. You know, some had a reason. Their parents were off on a ski trip and they didn't want to take the kid home, or they didn't have the ability to get them home or whatever. And so those kids were called the holdovers. They stayed at school, and then as a result, they had to put up with whoever they threw in their face. There was usually a teacher who got punished to be with those kids, because who wants to be at home during the holidays? Nobody. So the one who gets stuck, even though he did it the year before, is played by Paul Giamatti. And he plays a ancient history teacher that nobody likes. They just hate him. He gives them all Fs. He thinks that they're lazy and they don't really live up to their expectations. And this is 1970, remind you. And so the kids that are left back think, oh God, this is going to be just terrible. And he plans classes for them, exercise situations for them, and then they have all the bad food that's left over, and the cook is there, and she is going to, keep them occupied over the holidays when he isn't. So it's like the worst situation you could think of. And then a group of them gets the opportunity to go on a ski trip, except one student. He's stuck at the school with the bad teacher and the cook. And so the three of them have what they call their holiday experience.
Sounds almost like my college. I went to a smaller private university in New Jersey, so you couldn't stay over during the winter break. They closed the dorms. They basically kick you out unless you were basically stuck there because you were, let's say, a foreign exchange.
Foreign students, yeah.
That was it. They were the holdovers, and they got to stay in the dorms through the holidays. But that was it.
I never was a holdover. God, it was like icy as hell, and I would still force somebody to come and pick me up because I thought the last thing I want to do is be stuck here. So I was good. I got out. But I can imagine it would be dreadful. Because you see this, and this was during my time. It's set during the 70s, and that's about my period. And you go, oh my God, they have captured so many things that are so specific. They have a pinball machine, and the young man who is stuck back wants to play the pinball machine. Now, what they did was they put their quarter, their dime, whatever it cost, on the top of the pinball machine, and then that meant they were next. And the kid gets in a big fight with this guy who says, no, you're not next. My friend is next. And you think, oh, that is right. I remember that. Who would have thought that that would be a part of it? But they've done a great job of capturing all those little things, even down to the clothes. And Alexander Payne said that when he was casting, he was particularly looking for young actors who had the right haircuts because he didn't want them to look like they were contemporary. They needed those 70s haircuts, and they do have those 70s haircuts.
Kind of the moppy.
Yeah. What is it? It's not quite mullet yet because that wasn't in style.
That's more 80s.
Yeah. This was just kind of a head of hair that's post-Vietnam where you just wanted to grow your hair out.
Yep.
And And in those days, can I tell you, I had hair that was down to the back of my shoulders. I had long, long hair because I didn't want to cut it. And my dad would always make a huge stink about that hair. He says, when are you going to cut this hair? And so I pull my hair back and hide it in the collar of my shirt. And every night at dinner, he would pull the hair out and say, you got to cut this. That kind of sentiment that, hair was a big issue for people back in those days.
It was. Yeah. I've seen photos of my parents back in the 70s, and it was an interesting time with hairstyles. Now, in 1970, that would have made me, about -5 years old. So I wasn't present at that time.
You were not breaking any of those rules.
No, I was not.
But I was edging into the college years. It was a different world, a much different world. And you notice that too, how social media and the internet and all that has changed so much. Here, the kids have to look things up. And do they want to look things up? No, they do not. I think that the attitudes are still the same. You still press up against authority, but it's fascinating to see how the friendships develop. And I don't know that I would ever have been friends with a teacher of mine, but when you're forced to do it, you become a little closer. Adversity breeds friendship, maybe. That's the moral of the story.
Yeah. And it's diverse too. It's you've got some, different people of different eras. And
Devondre Randolph, she plays the head cook at the thing, and her son, you find out early on, her son went to school there. She agreed to be the cook at the school so that her son would be able to get a good education, which is what she was hoping for. And when the movie begins, you learn very quickly that her son has died. And so she's dealing with grief over the holidays. The young man is upset because his parents aren't taking him home. And the teacher is, not liked, as they openly tell him, nobody likes you. So why should we, So they all have a reason to fight for something.
But ultimately, the odd couple comes together, I can only presume.
I enjoyed it so much. It has been kind of testing the market throughout.
Okay.
And so it has had pre-screenings or previews or whatever before it actually opens this week. So you can see the audience. It kind of had a little taste of what it was all about, how they react. And I think the reaction is good. It's heartfelt. And it reminded me a lot of Green Book.
Okay.
Where kind of unlikely people are thrust together and how they build a friendship out of that. You remember that with the driver and the musician. And
right.
The musician couldn't go in certain restaurants. He wasn't allowed in, certain hotels. So there was definitely a different time. And you see that same reflection here in the Holdovers.
Interesting. So you mentioned at the top of this podcast, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which is to me one of my favorite movies of all time. And we did a whole episode on John Hughes movies to begin with quite a ways back. But that one in particular is one that it's almost like a tradition in the family. Got to throw Planes, Trains, and Automobiles on. And it's in some ways, because there's not a whole lot of Thanksgiving specific movies. You tend to get Christmas movies, not necessarily Thanksgiving. Right. But it was that kind of story where Steve Martin's character, John Candy's character are two very different people, but they're put in a very strange circumstance together, and they kind of come together. It almost feels like this movie takes some of that as well.
Very much so. The other thing that's interesting is that those were people who wanted to get home.
Right.
And here's ones who can't. There isn't a home, so they have to create a home. And they bring a tree, they do presents, it's very, very touching how they kind of make a family, even though there isn't a family. All three of the actors are potential Oscar nominees. That's how they are.
Wow. Do you see this becoming like a traditional holiday classic? One that we pop on, Christmas Story, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Dominic Sessa, who plays the young man, has never acted in films before.
Right.
I found him at a school, And we're looking for somebody who kind of fit, again, the hair was a big thing, fit the identity that they were looking for. And they were blown away by how good he was at kind of capturing that attitude that's kind of there. And you see it. He is easily the glue that holds this together. And a really good young actor. I think someday we'll look back and we'll say that was his first film, and look at how good he was.
This film is directed by Alexander Payne, and he's, of course, known for doing a lot of kind of quirky movies like Nebraska.
Yeah. Do you remember Election was kind of the one that put him on the map?
Right.
With Reese Witherspoon as that kind of dreadful girl who wanted to be student body president. And she was, she was determined. And the advisor to the student council, played by Matthew Broderick, did not want her to win and did whatever he could to try and derail her campaign by putting another student in her way. Chris Klein played that role. He shot it all in Omaha, which is where he's from. And it was very similar to this, where he went looking for real people to play these parts. And look what happened to their careers.
Right.
Reese Witherspoon, she won an Oscar. And Chris Klein had a long career. Look at American Pie. I mean, he has some pretty good credits behind his name. And they were ones, she wasn't necessarily, but the other ones that fill in the film. And if you go back and look at Election, you'll see young actors in that have had lots of work.
Right.
It was supposed to be a two-hander between Reese Witherspoon and Matthew Broderick. And some of those other ones are making a real big splash in that first film. So I wouldn't doubt that we'll see the same thing happen with this one.
Yeah, and even like a movie like Sideways, there's another one and he did it with Paul Giamatti, and that was, Paul Giamatti, he's done so many movies, and he's always so good in what he does, but it almost took until Sideways to really get him out there.
He was a great character actor.
Yep.
Who had bit parts or small parts in films and then suddenly blew up.
Yeah.
And he was in John Adams and he was in Sideways. And now he's kind of your go-to if you want one of those kind of erudite people that are in your film. We'll call Paul.
I know you weren't able to get any interviews with this film, but through the magic of media promotion, I happen to have some, just out of the box right here. So we're going to go now to Alexander Payne, the director of the film.
Christmas break is upon us, and every year there's a number of boys with nowhere to go. The kids from foreign countries and the ones with divorced parents and stuff like that. And this year there's a boy, he's a junior, and kind of a troublemaker, kind of troubled, damaged and troubled, but a smart kid underneath. And his mother calls him last minute to say she's widowed, has been widowed, she's just remarried, she has just remarried, and they want to use this Christmas vacation as their honeymoon. You understand, don't you, darling? Stanley's been working so hard. The teacher selected this year to stay behind with the boys is a very disliked, curmudgeonly ancient history teacher, Paul Giamatti. Through a kind of deus ex machina script device, all the other boys find somewhere else to go at some point, and it's down to just this teacher, played by Paul Giamatti, and this boy, and the head cook at the school. Also, she's a single mom, and her son attended this very same school on a charity scholarship, but did not have the wherewithal to go to college and has just been killed in Vietnam. So this movie is about the adventures of these three kind of shipwrecked people during a very snowy 2 weeks in Massachusetts in 1970. I've been an admirer of school movies, Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner and If and Peter Weir's movie, and I had seen a companion of those films, a somewhat under-known French film by a great director, but from 1935 or 36, called Merluce by Marcel Pagnol, and it had that same basic premise. I saw that 10 or 12 years ago and it never left me. I thought, you know, that's a pretty good premise for a film. But I personally didn't have the wherewithal to, I didn't have the life experience of a private school and so forth. I'm from Omaha. Nor did I have really the discipline to go research it. But a pilot came my way set in a prep school, and it was a very fine pilot. And I called up the writer and said, I thank you for sending me this wonderful script. I don't want to read it. Would you consider taking on an idea of mine? And so it was, David Hemingson. That's how David Hemingson, the fine screenwriter, came into my life. So typically I've written my own scripts, and certainly I was involved in rewriting this one and conceiving it, but David Hemingson really did an outstanding job writing it. That's what attracted me to it. It sounds hyperbolic, and I'm sure it is, but I just think Paul Giamatti is the greatest actor. There's nothing he can't do. From the moment I first met him, when he auditioned for Sideways for me, going on 20 years ago, I thought, this guy can make even bad dialogue work, and he can, no matter what the dialogue. I had him in Omaha for a public interview, and I said, you know, Paul Giamatti, you can really make bad dialogue work. I'll bet you could even read the phone book, like they say, read the phone book and make it compelling. And he laughed, and I leaned over and I pulled out the Omaha phone book and I handed it to him. I said, would you please just open up to a page? He started reading it and brought the house down. That's why I like Paul Giamatti. And he's just a lovely guy, brilliant guy, most well-read human I know, and a delight to work with.
Up next, let's hear from Divine Joy Randolph about her role in this film.
It's wonderful working with Paul Giamatti. He has such character as a human being, but also with what he brings to the table. And he's so great because sometimes, you know, when you work with actors, those who you really revere for being so talented can be very serious sometimes and stuffy. And what is so amazing, and I think speaks even more to his talent, is that he's able to snap in and out of the character. It's very seamless. But I love right before they say action, I'll peek a look and you'll see him just like morph and fall into place into his character. Dominic is quite special for having never done it before. I would say what's more impressive even outside of his talent, which is quite natural and just very present, and non-stereotypical. He's doing I don't know if I could have done it, to play this hurt, damaged teenager, right? And it not just be this one-dimensional screaming kid every 5 seconds. He's really found the nuances to all of it. But I would say what I'm the most impressed with is the human being that he is. He's so kind and gentle and very intelligent. And there's an old soul about him where it feels as if he's been here before. You can tell there's a real desire to learn this industry and how things work. And he's very quick. I remember in the very beginning when we were just doing table reads, and we still had at least 2, if not 3 weeks before filming, he was already off book. I was not off book. So I was very impressed. We're just seeing 2, 3 individuals, which I wonder if they weren't under these circumstances, if they would have had the opportunity to really get to know one another and to be an unpredicted vessel of support for one another. And I think what's beautiful about that is in this movie, in a way, it transcends ageism, racism, gender, and that these 3 individuals, due to the loss and pain that they have, it's like sometimes when you've hit rock bottom, you're open to anything, to seek relief wherever you can.
We also have another star from the film, Dominic Sessa, talking about what turned into his first major film appearance.
I went in for my first audition, and it was, I was pretty relaxed because I wasn't expecting much out of it. And they called me back later that day, and I did some more reading, and eventually Alexander came to my school to come meet me and audition with him. And yeah, for the next 2 months, it was a lot of just touch and go, email, Zoom calls, and all that stuff. And by the time I had my last audition, I didn't know it was my last audition. I thought it was going to be, do that 2 weeks later for the next one. But we sat there, and it was me, Paul, and Alexander on a Zoom call, and we just read the whole script through. And Paul would read the parts that, in a scene where I was in, but he wasn't in. I would read parts for him in other scenes, and by the end, it was, I got the role that day. So yeah, it was really surreal and exciting, and didn't really know what to think or what to expect, but it was nice. The biggest challenge for me working on a film for the first time would be the turnaround on notes personally, because I've done a lot of live theater before. It's all I've done before is the shows at my school. And we have after school like 2-3 hour rehearsals, and you receive your notes at the end, and you can kind of, you have your journal, and you can go back to your room and internalize them and think about them for the next rehearsal or the show, or whatever's coming. But in this, it's really a matter of coming in, knowing your lines, and not really knowing, maybe having an idea of how the scene may pan out, but not having the clarity that you might have in a theater setting. So yeah, I mean, that's the hardest part for me, really doing this the first time, is, doing something, receiving a note, and then, okay, rolling, go, So yeah, for me, but I think it's, I think I've adjusted pretty well to it, and obviously I have a lot of people around me who have been helping me prepare for that sort of thing. Being in a film with Alexander and, working on one of his movies, it's incredible working with him personally, having the director who's, sitting right there at the camera and sitting right next to you, and comes up to you after every take and is in your ear. You can feel his presence, and it's comforting in that sense. But I think, I don't know, outside of that, he just attracts a lot of professionalism to his movies and his work. I think just him being a part of it, everyone around him sort of is, extra professional and is extra hard at work, and is really on top of it, and more so excited about working on it because of the type of person he is. My character, Angus Tully, say definitely a very damaged kid. He's been through a lot, yeah. It's being at a boarding school, I can understand how heartbreaking that would be to be ready for break and then have your own parents tell you that you can't come home for Christmas. And yeah, and I feel like, for him, he's got a lot of these things in the past that have happened to him, and these experiences, obviously, with his father and his mother and his mother's boyfriend. And, it's not explicitly said what goes on, but you can sort of understand that there's a broken family dynamic there that's going on behind the scenes for him. And yeah, I think that really comes out with, his character and his daringness to say some of the things he says, and to, pull off some of the things he tries to pull off. But yeah, but at the same time, charming and innocent. And it's, one of those people you love to hate because you love them,
Up next, we have writer-producer David Hemingson.
Alexander read a pilot that I wrote about 4 years ago that was set in a prep school in 1980. And he kind of called me up out of the blue, and having read it, was like, I love this pilot. And I was like incredibly flattered because he's like a personal hero of mine. He's a brilliant director, so I was like blown away. And then he said, but I don't really do TV, but I have this feature I want to do that's set in that world in 1970. I said, okay, sure. And I said, what is he? He said, well, basically, I really want to do this sort of optically challenged, kind of odiferous professor that gets stuck at a prep school over Christmas break 1970 to 71 with a group of students, one of whom has sort of been stranded by his family, most definitely, and this relationship kind of evolves over the course of the movie. And so that was sort of the genesis of the whole thing. He's a brilliant, brilliant director, and I kind of feel like I went to film school on Alexander's back, in that, like, you know, he would make these references. He'd want something kind of tonally or visually, or he'd, you know, kind of want a narrative moment that, as opposed to try to unpack it verbally, he'd just be like, John Garfield, you know, all right. Michael Curtiz, point of no return, 1950, midpoint forward, click. Like, what? Hello? I'd be like, and I'd have to figure out, oh, okay, he wants sort of tonally this kind of thing, you know. He wants to be able to evoke certain moods, and I think for him, it's got to be the organic evolution of the characters over the course of the narrative. And so I think the reason he doesn't get specific in terms of distinct turns he wants is because he wants me to find it and then for him to reflect upon it. I mean, that's been our working relationship, and I hope to God it continues for many, many decades to come, because I would kill to work with him again. I think he's a brilliant guy. We're so blessed. I mean, Alexander can cast. I mean, he top to bottom. The actors in this show are amazing. I love my Holdovers. I love all those kids. Those kids are all amazing, you know, and funny and genuine and real. I mean, I think reality is sort of one of the hallmarks of an Alexander Payne movie. You know, it just feels real. And it's heightened, and he takes you on a journey, and there's a fun narrative. I mean, you have a good time, and I think that's one of his imperatives. Like, he wants people to be entertained, but he wants people to be entertained by the human comedy, by the reality of it, by, you know, by the landscape of people's souls. Like, he wants you to take that journey, you know, and that's kind of what we do in this movie, I think.
And now let's hear from producer Mark Johnson.
I think it was very much a story about family. It's a very clever script. It's deceptive. It's deceptive in that it's about much more than you would think at first. And it's also extremely funny. And for me, as a longtime Alexander Payne fan, I think it is arguably his most emotional movie. So to take what he does and with his characters, sort of the uniqueness of his characters, and to put them in this situation, it was an undeniable script. Paul Giamatti is one of those wonderful actors who's really a chameleon, and he can play any number of people. So we've seen him in a bunch of movies and television shows, but I don't know that I've ever seen Paul Giamatti play the same character twice. And so he somehow, he is somebody who can both put you off and yet bring you in at the same time. Dominic Sessa, who plays Angus, this is his first movie. He had been a drama student, or been in school, in boys' school, but didn't have an agent, didn't have a manager. We had this wonderful casting director, Susan Shopmaker, who decided to go out and find, you know, a discovery. And one of the smart places she went was to private boys' school's drama department and say, all right, who do you have? Who do you offer up? And that's how Dominic came in. He didn't come in through any orthodox means. It was really from out of nowhere. And I don't know what the number is. She probably saw 600-700 boys for this part. And Dominic, early on, we said, well, wait a minute, this is somebody to pay attention to. And Alexander put him through the paces. He had him sort of try out and test a number of times. And finally, he tested with Paul Giamatti. And I think Alexander, Paul, all the rest of us said, no, this is the guy. I think Dominic's a good choice to play this part because he has no tricks. He's a very honest actor. He's playing it as honestly as he can, and consequently, he's completely believable. I never, in looking at the finished film, and quite frankly, in all the dailies, I don't see any false moments. I don't see him at some point pretending to be something. He always seems to be that. Divine Joy Randolph is an actress who's been around for a while. That makes it sound like she's been doing it for years. She's just somebody who is doing features and television right now at quite a clip. And the interesting thing is she normally plays a comedic character. And not that she's very funny in The Holdovers, but I wouldn't describe her character as Mary Lamb as somebody who's comedic. She's actually has quite amount of sorrow in her, and is a mother who's gone through a real tragedy. We knew she had the acting chops, not just because she'd gone to the Yale School of Drama, but she had, as soon as we tested her, it was clear that she knew how to play this character. And it was great to watch her because as an actress, she discovered who Mary Lamb was. She started at one place and built the character, and you could see her do it. And she ended up with an accent that was quite original to Divine, but also quite true to where her character came from.
All right, Bruce, so we had an action-packed group.
You know, I got a chance to talk to Alexander Payne and David Hemingson and also some of the behind-the-scenes people about this. It's based sort of on the writer's life, sort of. It was not written by Alexander Payne, just directed by him, and he kind of understood the sensibility of this. But there is a tie, and if you look at this, on a shelf, there is a statue that was also in Sideways. And so it's one of those little like spoiler things. If you look, it's on a shelf in, I believe it's Paul Giamatti's office. And you'll also remember that it was in Sideways if you look very carefully.
Wow.
They had one hell of a time trying to find enough blazers that were from the 70s for all the boys in the film. So that
Double
was
knit only goes so far.
a big challenge. Yeah, they have a big challenge. And so that they look the right way. Yeah, and so for them, a lot of them have worked with Alexander Payne for a number of films. And they kind of know his shorthand and what he's looking for, so they can anticipate what a potential problem might be or what might be looming.
Wow, good stuff. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It wasn't really on my radar until I saw, it was probably during the summer, one of the movies I saw at least had a trailer to it. It looked pretty interesting, but I wasn't sure, is this going to be good, isn't it? But now that you're singing its praises.
Watch the ads for it because the ads are done in 70s style.
Okay.
So when you see them, it's like, is this an old film that they're just throwing up? Whenever you see those on TCM, look at the trailers they used to do for these things. Well, they wanted to look like that, so it looks like the 70s. So you get that whole vibey feeling. And there's one shot in the film that reminds me exactly of The Graduate. Exactly. And you'll see that shorthand that he uses, and you'll think, yep, I get where you're going. I see it. I understand what's happening here. There's another thing I'd like to talk about. It's called Nyad.
Okay.
And this is going to be one of those ones that you'll hear the names bandied about for acting prizes. Annette Bening plays Diana Nyad. If you remember her, she was a long-distance swimmer who wanted to swim from Cuba to Florida. And everybody said, oh, you're crazy. You can't do it. You're in your 60s. You're not going to be able to do this. And she was determined that she needed to make her mark. So she got a crew together and tried it and failed. And she tried it again and failed. And she tried it again and failed. And you think after this many times, give up. It's not going to happen. But you see in the film, which will be on Netflix, the kind of drive and fortitude she had and determination. And a lot of that is fueled by her best friend, who serves as kind of the coach, so that she's in the boat while Diana is swimming by the side of the boat. And she's like feeding her, giving her any kind of, if she gets sick, if she needs medicine, hydrating her. And then when she starts to kind of wane, she's giving her those pep talks. And Jodie Foster plays that role. And Jodie is, where has she been all these years? It's like, let's get back to work. I want to give her that kind of a pep talk because she steals the film right out from underneath Annette Bening. Fascinating, fascinating partnership. And the film was directed by the people behind Free Solo. If you remember Free Solo, it was about the mountain climber.
Right.
Won the Oscar for Best Documentary.
Yeah.
Now they're trying the same kind of feel, but with a fictional film or a
Dramatization.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with actors. And they do take risks, and they also do take some liberties with the reality of the Diana Nyad story. But they still are able to capture those beats that you're looking for. It's kind of fascinating to see how they can make swimming really interesting. Because when you're just watching somebody swim laps near the side of a boat, are you interested? Do you care? You got to give it to Annette Bening for just being able to do the swimming that you need to do to pretend like you're falling. Diana Nyad is not a person that you could hug. I really do not think she's embraceable, even though she has that drive that you see in a lot of athletes. But boy, Annette Bening captures that aspect really well. You think, why would I work with you? I don't want to do anything with you if you're going to be this kind of obnoxious and mean and kind of self-centered.
Sure.
And yet it works. And at the end of the film, they do show you actual footage of her. And man, she captures her. She's right there.
Now, was this film mostly in the water then?
If there's a lot in the water, and could it be in a pool? It could have been in a pool, because a lot of the scenes take place at night. And you realize that they had to worry about sharks because she did not want to be in a shark cage. She didn't feel that was fair. But she did have there was a red light that apparently sharks know this for the future if you need this.
Okay.
Sharks do not come near red light. They somehow see that as a warning to them. And so this red light kind of helped guide her along where they were going, but it also kept the sharks away.
Yeah, the most knowledge I have about avoiding sharks comes from the 1960s Adam West classic Batman, the movie,
Shark
where
repellent?
he used bad shark repellent.
And Jaws.
Yes.
Jaws taught us so much about sharks. Were you really scared of sharks before Jaws?
No.
It was just another fish in the ocean. But now they can get a Sharknado going like nobody's business, right?
Yeah. Now, how does this film stack up to a film like Free Solo, which is a documentary? Because I always find it fascinating when you get, like you take Peter Jackson, for instance, who's known for Lord of the Rings and all these big epics, and then he goes and directs a documentary about the Beatles.
The thing that was so surprising about Free Solo was the cinematography. They were up on the mountains with him. And the idea that they were able to get some of that stuff, well, I got to rethink this. If I can't do it with the telephoto lens, I don't think I'm going up there. But I think that was what was so remarkable. Yes, his story, Alex Hunham, I think it is, his story is remarkable. But also remarkable is the idea that people would follow him, shoot his trek, and not get killed.
Right.
You
I
know?
Anytime I see those mountain movies like that, when you're, whether it's mountain climbing or scaling Everest or going deep into the wilderness, I'm thinking to myself, what, if I'm the director of this film, my first hire is a really good second unit director, and you're going to go take care of these. I'm going to just handle.
I'll talk to you from the ground. We'll be able to deal with it that way. But I think they do a great job of kind of making you feel that claustrophobia in the water. But because they're not dealing with huge visuals like they were before, that becomes a different challenge. But, you feel like you're in the water with her. So I guess that's the goal. But I don't know. Do they want to do this? Is this the goal? Or maybe it was just one of those athlete films that they hadn't tried. And so that was the challenge for them.
Well, it sounds good. It sounds like an interesting one. I'm not sure I'm going to race out to the theaters to see it. But at the very least, it might be one where as soon as it hits streaming...
Skim it on Netflix. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else of note coming up soon?
Oh, can I tell you what? I'm going to tease what maybe we'll talk about next week.
Okay.
And that's Fargo.
Oh, yes.
Fargo is coming, and Fargo, we are not holding off with anything, but I'm going to talk to people that you wouldn't necessarily talk to. Again, we're doing this because we don't have the access to the actors because of the actor strike, which, knock on wood, should be ending soon, we hope.
Please. please.
But I'm hoping to talk to the special effects and makeup people and also the costume people and how they are able to pull off, because this has a lot of those special effects that you're going to go, wow, I can't believe it. And it's very Home Alone taken to extremes and scary.
Okay.
So that's next week, Fargo.
I can't wait. There's the two shows that I've been waiting for the most recently. Fargo, and then also True Detective, which is coming back soon on HBO.
Well, we'll be there, hopefully, and we'll get to talk to real people.
Hopefully. That's all we can hope for. All right, Bruce, thanks again for another great episode, and we will be back again next week.
Be a holdover next week.